You have background noise, I think, in yours.
I know. Let me see how. Can you hear him speaking?
Yeah, can you make the universal symbol of cut it out?
I'm going to quickly move.
All right, go ahead. So Ayesha is moving because we are having a work from home environment, and she is trying to work at home with other people in her house. The fun of working from home. So it's nice to see Amanda and Jason and Meg are here. Good to see you guys as always. We have some fun and interesting things to talk about culture and how it fits for women. Lisa has joined us too. Good to see you. There we go.
Hope this works.
Hey, you didn't have to move to a closet.
Oh, sometimes it's just that close.
I believe it. I was just saying, good morning to everybody and telling them, these are the trials and tribulations of working from home. And you're not alone working from home anymore if you were before. We now have company.
And it should theoretically all work out, right? Because I gave everybody the heads up of, I will be on a call that is recording from 8:25, and then,
Again, which really fits into our topic today, which is about women and, what cultures fit better with women. And I'll just, Ayesha Hamilton, my co-host, is the owner at Hamilton Law, and she focuses her practice on employment law, and she gives a voice to employees who otherwise aren't able to find it. My name is Alisa McCabe. I'm the owner at First Steps Financial, and we help businesses simplify their processes, organizing financials, and gaining insight using technology and strategies. All information and content on this webinar is for general purposes only. And I just want to start out with the definition of corporate culture. And because I think we're going to tie back to it on everything that we talk to. Culture in business refers to the set of behavioral and procedural norms that can be observed within a company. This includes policies, procedures, ethics, values, goals, and conduct. It is also referred to as the personality of the company and defines the kind of environment that employees want to work in, which I think is huge. The cultural variation in businesses is affected by several factors such as management style, company goals, the background of the employees, local and national government policies, implementations of rules, rewards, and punishment systems. And this is that definition came from Indeed. So, Ayesha, how are you doing this morning after that little?
Once I get over being irritated, I'm good.
I'm with you.
But it's these types of things that, as you rightfully said, it's what shapes what we as women think of as our ideal work environment, right? Because that's the question on my mind. So Alisa, you do a lot of training on company culture for your employees and then also outside your company. How did your company culture come to be?
Well, I knew I wanted to start a company where I would want to work. So, and I knew that I had things in my life that were really important, like my family, and I needed my work to fit around it. And not even when I had time, but more of it needed to mesh with my life. And
when you say family, you have 6 kids?
I do. And you know what? And it's a yours, mine, and ours. Yeah. So, And that puts another wrench into it. And I do have to say, and to be honest, where I learned about culture, company culture, is from my blended family, because I have a stepson, and I never ever wanted him to feel like he was less than anybody else in the family, because there's so many negative things about being a stepchild. And so I wanted to make him feel like, you are my child just like my other kids. And so I always treated him the same. And my husband and I have been married for 17 years, and my kids and his son are so close that they went to college together, and they tell everybody that they're siblings. So I think that's where I learned company culture and inclusion, and really how to build a company where someone feels like they belong and they make a difference and they have a voice, and all those things. And I based my company around that. I don't think consciously I did that, but I knew what I wanted to create, and I knew I wanted women to have a place to work that they could enhance their professional side. I mean, Ayesha, can you imagine giving up what you do and just being 100% stay-at-home mom?
Right. And I would kill somebody, so it's probably best that I'm not 100% stay-at-home mom. It's not safe for others. But also the sense of, I worked hard for, through law school to take the bar exam. I had my first child when I was 30, right? So to me, I'm not giving up a career at 30. But I will tell you that the first couple of firms I worked in did not make it easy to be a mom. So the very first firm I worked in, and I didn't have children at the time, but the senior partner would say to others, "Oh, you're leaving early?" And you'd be leaving at 5:30 because daycare closed at 6, right? And that's what you had to do, right? So how is that leaving early? How is that understanding that just because he lived in a large house, had 5 children, a wife, a nanny, and a driver, that was not everybody's reality? And so the company culture in that firm was difficult, right? The next firm that I worked in, it was 2 main partners, and then the rest of us associates and staff. And the company culture there was, you need to work all the time. That if a client is driving by, the main road in Englewood Cliffs, that they need to be able to see our lights on. They need to be able to have the phone answered. And this was sort of pre everybody having cell phones all the time. It needed to be, you needed to be front and center. So when we moved then from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, I had the choice of, I can look for a job in a law firm that adds in an hour commute each way. My son is 1 year old. I'll probably never see him. So why would I, am I choosing to do that? And then I know we've talked before, everyone's always happy to ask you free advice when they figure out you're a lawyer. And I thought, well, does it have to be free? Like, can I start charging them? And that's when I decided that I think the only way I could make this work, and I think a lot of women come to this position, right, is I still want to practice my profession, but the only way that it's going to work is if I actually do it for myself. And then I set the rules. And that's what you did, right? It sounds like.
And that's the environment I provide. I have a lot of CPAs who work for me who do not want to work in the accounting culture, because, and I think lawyers and accountants are probably the last people to accept any new, changes that happen. Yeah. And they want to have that work-life balance. And it's funny, I didn't know that you started when your son was little. And that was me too. Like, I had kids and I'm like, I like my kids. I enjoy them, but I also have this need for something that's for me, that I want to grow professionally. I like to learn things. That's just me. I like that. And I needed it to be separate than mom. I needed to have more than that. And that's just me. That's the way I felt. And I'm finding more and more people feel that way. And it's incredibly rewarding. There was a study done about company culture, about what women and men wanted. And they came up with three things that were equal for men and women. And one was feel respected, supported, an opportunity to create a livelihood. And Ayesha and I were talking about this, and we thought it's totally true. I think men and women both feel the same about this. And everybody wants to feel respected. Everybody wants to be supported in their job, and they want that opportunity to create a livelihood. But then we went on to talk about, well, what does being supported feel like as a woman as opposed to a man? I think we have different ideals. Like, if you need to leave to go take your kid to a doctor's appointment, or pick your kid up because they're sick, or your kid's having a bad day, and I'm sorry, teenage girl 13, and she calls you up and says, I'm sad and I don't know why, and you're like, oh my God, have you tried some essential oils? Okay, all right, look, maybe you just need some time with mommy, and because sometimes that's all kids need, and that's who we are.
Yeah, and I think so. Meg adds, I think it's really an important comment. She says culture starts with your values, and the leadership of the organization sets the tone. And I think that's exactly right, especially in the entrepreneurial setting, right? So you created this company because you wanted to be able to do certain things, right? There are 10 million women entrepreneurs out there. But I think the number is actually much larger, because women who traditionally seem to be more successful and rise in the ranks of their corporations also behave as entrepreneurs, right?
Sure.
So it's your top down, as Meg says, top down leadership, top down tone, right? So if you are, you're like Amanda, and you're in a department that you're the head of that's within a larger firm, you are still an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
You are still setting tone and leadership for your team. So anytime, it doesn't matter whether you formed your own LLC or you're working under someone else's LLC. I think there's a great amount of success in being able to anticipate what you and your team need to work really well together, to be able to say, okay, so now I've anticipated their needs. I'm telling you what my needs are. There is always a meeting point, right? There's always, and one of the big things that study I think talked about was women respond really well to flexibility, right? Men don't want the flexibility as much, and they don't need it, right? Because they've got a wife who's going to cover this stuff.
For the most part, I really do. I believe. I think that's still the norm in our culture in the United States. And I think I was in a workshop, and the woman was talking about, when the workforce was built, it was mostly men. And so working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 is what worked for men. And having a meeting Monday morning at 9 o'clock does not work for women. And Jason has he has a point that he put out. Gender equity in the workplace was not supposed to mean that now women can be treated like the tools that men have always been expected to be, which is interesting. So practically, how can women and men move in the culture in their workplace and create a more family-friendly workplace? And I think that's happening. I think it's happening. I think, COVID has been a game changer in family life. And I know everybody out there listening has spent way more time with their family than they ever thought they would. Good and bad things.
But I think you also look at, so I experience that employers react badly when you're talking about family-friendly culture. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, how do you maximize productivity from your employees? The way you do that, maximizing productivity and loyalty, is trying to look at what makes them want to work hard and stay here.
Yeah.
What makes them want to stay here is by offering them something that they can't get somewhere else. Alisa, your employees cannot get the level of autonomy and flexibility and understanding that you offer. They can't get that anywhere else. You can't go to a large CPA firm and say, I'm going to work remotely. They don't want that.
I think you can't even get it in a small firm, to be
Right.
honest. I think there's not, it just hasn't happened yet. Um, there was a CEO of Campbell's Soup Company years ago, and his name is Doug Can Can Canet.
Huh?
Conant, that was it. Douglas Conant. He came in. Campbell's Soup was they had tanked. They were at the bottom. They had a toxic work culture. And he made a point to show care and inclusion to every single person in the company. He would interact meaningfully with everyone in the company. When he was there for 10 years, he wrote over 30,000 handwritten notes to 20,000 employees.
Wow.
And they said, like, it when people got that handwritten note from the CEO of the company, he says you could see it tacked to their walls, and because it was that important. And can you imagine in a big company like that? I mean, they had thousands and thousands of employees, that you can create this culture. You can make people feel included and make them feel loyalty to a company. It just takes a lot of effort. And like you were saying, and Meg said, it's from the top down.
Right. I love Meg's comment. So this is great. She says temperatures in high-rise office buildings are set cooler because men wear undershirts, dress shirt, and a suit. I will tell you, any office I've worked in a high-rise building, I have frozen in the dead of summer. I will still bring a sweater.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Meg, right on the money.
Yeah.
So
And then,
yeah.
and Amanda has a good comment. She says, everyone needs to stop apologizing and making excuses for attending personal matters. It makes us human. Get the work done or address how the job is not compatible with the services that you can or are willing to provide. And why or how you set your priorities is not your employer's business. I totally agree with you, Amanda, but I also know that there are still bosses out there and managers who gauge your worth by how many hours you sit at your desk.
That's right.
I mean, they even remote culture, they have things where you have to hit a clock every 15 minutes so that they know you're working.
Right. And if you're not on a chat, if we IM you and you don't respond right away, there's questions about where were you?
Where were you?
Are you working? But
oh my God.
It's a productive culture.
That's exactly. It's terrible.
Right. And I think, honestly, it's very empowering to be able to say, yes, I do value your business. I do, however, from Tuesday through Wednesday afternoon, I am unavailable. Yeah. Now, if that is incompatible with what you want with a lawyer or you want with a CFO, outside your company, then we don't have we're not the right fit.
Yeah, we're lucky that we've been able to do that. And I think that it's going to grow more and more. I really do, because that's one of the things when and you and I were talking about this. So you can offer, your services, my services, and maybe a man might produce the same service, but he might produce it differently. So in my instance, someone might just say, look what I've done. I've maximized your bottom line. Here's all the numbers. Everything's done on time. But specifically in our company, one of the big things we focus on is that collaboration and making the business owner feel as though they understand it and that somebody cares about them. And I just wonder if, because you provide that for your clients and they're just not, okay, well, here's what's going to happen. This is what it is. They truly feel cared about, that makes a difference.
Well, and I think what makes a difference is for the number of times that I've told you I am not available when you would expect me to be available are fairly minor, right? It's like once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Um, but there are, of course, there's a lot more times when you can get me on a weekend, when you text or email me that you do get a response, right? So I'm happy to schedule client calls on a weekend because that works in the context of my flexibility,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can easily drive my kids to swimming, drop them off, sit in the parking lot in my car and answer client calls. I
Yeah.
don't care if that's a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. But that's the kind of flexibility I needed
Mm-hmm.
that established structured firms are not okay with, right? They need FaceTime, at least back when I was in them. It's been 15 years I've been out on my own. So things might have changed, but that was what drove me into sort of the next the next phase of my life. But here's a question for you, Alisa. You are at the point where you have developed and defined what your company culture is.
Mm-hmm.
You in last week's conversation, we talked about how you make sure that the disc profiles of the people that you're hiring match the disc profiles of what you want in your company culture. That once you bring them on board, you do actually do a training on company culture, because it's very important that they understand that this needs to be, as Amanda said, a good fit, right? Fit is important for productivity. But how do you make sure that they stick with it, right? What kinds of things do you do along the way in the employment relationship that makes sure that everybody's still on the same page?
So yeah, and that has been a challenge to make sure, because we come at the company culture from so many different directions. We talk about, how you address an email, and how you talk to clients, and how we work with each other. And so we do all that. And I think, twice a year we do reviews. We do, like, people do a self review, and then we review each other so that everybody has a little bit of input on, what their interaction is with this other person. And that gives us a gauge of what's going on. And then there's always, we've developed a questionnaire for our clients because we want feedback from them too. And that's really where, if the client is feeling the way we want them to, which is that we're doing a fantastic job, that they're cared about, that they can go run their business, and we're taking care of the financial side, then that person is exemplifying our company culture.
Right. And I
So,
think from an employer's perspective, you have to do the things, right, that your employment lawyer here will beat you over the head with. You have to have a handbook that is consistent with your company culture, but also maintains all of those elements of zero tolerance policy for certain types of behavior. You have to do trainings that reinforce that. But one of the things that I love that you do, you described a couple of sessions ago, you do a weekly check-in with your whole team, right? And you do a wellness check. Like, is everybody doing okay?
yeah.
And that is an expression of company culture, right? Not just jumping right in. All right, whose to-do list is done? Who's not, who's
Yeah.
falling behind? Who's got, it is not actually all business as usual.
Yeah.
COVID or not COVID,
Yeah.
when your employees feel cared for, they're not going anywhere else. And we
Yeah.
all know turnover is expensive. So you need to be creating an environment where your employees actually want to stay, and they actually want to work hard for you because they feel valued.
Yeah, and I think I think everyone that works with us does. They do feel, even people that have left for other reasons are really distraught to leave, because I think they like this environment. It feels like a group of people that care about you and will pitch in, and but I do have to ask you a question. How do you handle situations where the behavior falls outside of the company culture? Like, is it grounds to terminate? Like, is it bad fit? You
So
know, like,
I
how
think
do you?
what you really have to look at, right, is how am I defining fit is part of it, right? Is it always that I feel like it's a bad fit because this older woman that works for me can't seem to get the hang of the software? That's a problem. You need
Yeah.
to be cautious about that, right? But if it's a bad fit that this employee is grumpy to other employees, that, you know, we want a company culture where everyone is open and positive and supportive of each other, and does not bring toxicity into the workplace, then I think you can sit down with that person. Really, that's grounds to terminate right away, right? We are not a good fit. But if you want to say, listen, I want to try and give you a chance, you know, it's early days yet. I don't think you understood sort of what we're looking for here. And what's really important is for us to be respectful and kind to each other, in addition to being respectful and kind to our clients, right? Because that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's
Absolutely.
also very important that people around you be happy too.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. I think that speaks to like what Meg put in the chat, and she said that, you know, empower your people, set the expectations, and either they like it or they don't. I think
right.
having expectations is hugely important. Like in my company, you know, being computer savvy and, you know, not being grumpy is, I guess I should put that in the job description. No
Yeah.
grumpy allowed.
No grumpy. But I think the really important thing also is, as an entrepreneur, you have a decent sized team. You're not a one man show. With your team, you have the ability at the size that you're at to directly connect with all of your employees and get a real sense of, hey, who's stepping out of line, or who isn't fitting very well for us, right? Now, when you talk about companies like the size of Goodyear Tire or Campbell Soup, right? Now you've got HR that is
Yeah.
responsible for disseminating your company culture. And that's where the problems arise,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
I
it's not,
agree.
but I love the story of the CEO of Campbell Soup, that he was trying very hard with 20,000 employees to still have an in-person connection to the
Yeah.
extent that that was possible. You
Yeah.
don't hear about that.
It totally turned the company around. They went from being, you know, they were losing money. It was really bad. They went up, you know, to be one of the top companies and a great place to work. So it's funny that you say that. So I have 12 employees now, and I often think, when do you lose that connection? And so how do you keep that connection? So, you know, is it when you get to 20? Is it when you get to 50? Is it when you get to 100? How do you not know? How do you know, that people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing? I don't, like you said, you have an HR department. So do you train your HR to have certain criteria like that? Look, people should be doing these things because they're a bunch of soft skills.
Yeah.
The manager is going to take care of their hard skills. It's the HR department that maybe you need to transfer your culture to and your idea, and they need to kind of be you.
But I think HR is, I really have limited expectations of HR.
Really, tell us how you feel about HR.
But I think you, as the top, let's talk about the pyramid, right? You're the top of the pyramid, can impart your company culture and the importance of compliance with the company culture to your management team, who then carries the message down in the way they treat their employees. Because it's not just the expectation of productivity, right? It's in the expectation of how you treat your employees. So how the CEO treats his management team and then says to them, this is how I expect you to treat your team. And
Yeah,
it has to be trickled down.
yeah.
Um,
No, I
I'm
agree.
not sure that HR can do any more than implement the handbook rules
Right.
and really make sure that people aren't doing egregious things in the workplace.
I love Jason's comment. He says the sting rule of leadership. Every little thing you do is culture, and every breath you take, they'll be watching you.
I love it. That's really good, Jason.
The sting role of leadership. I am going to use that one,
I
Jason.
love
Thank
it.
Because it's true. They do watch you. It's just like your kids.
Yeah.
You can tell your kids, don't do something like don't eat a bag of chips before you go to bed tonight. But if you do it, they're going to want you to do it.
Right. And it comes down to credibility, right? And I think that's the other thing you have to have is as you're building loyalty, you're building trust with your clients and with your with your employees. And trust comes from credibility. Like,
Oh,
do
absolutely.
I believe this person?
Yeah.
When they tell me my company's having a really hard time, I cannot give huge Christmas time bonuses this year. Do I believe it? Or am I looking for a job come January 1 and I'm going to give them 2 days notice and I'm going to blow out of there?
And that speaks volumes because they say, you don't quit a job, you quit a manager. We are out of time. We have 1 minute, and I just want to tell everybody what we're going to be talking about next week. We are going to be talking about how to handle difficult relationships, business and personal, and how much should we keep the peace. And I think that Ayesha and I have, talked about difficult relationships, and we have a lot more to say about how much you keep the peace.
Yeah, we might be talking about mother-in-laws, so
well, and that's exactly new. It is like how much do you take for the sake of others? Because I think as women we do that. It was great seeing everybody. Thank you for all your comments. We loved it. Ayesha, it was awesome seeing you.
Enjoy your vacation, Alisa.
Thank you. And I'll be back to work next week.
Wonderful.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Everybody.